or you can find all local NTP servers. That's pretty cool. If you want to know what NTP servers have on the network, just make a multicast request and you get the reply. That's very cool. But you can only ask them from local. So it's not like if you want to know, hey, what are the NTP servers in that city in Japan or that network, it doesn't work. No, only for your local network it works. Well, for some. There are some multicast addresses which are global, but these will be very experimental because this will be very easy for DNS out of service. So this is currently in the standard experimental and not being used. So as a result, it is a big problem to find remote systems. But now we get already to the next stage, which is reconnaissance. Reconnaissance in IPv4 is easy. A normal subnet size is 2 to the power of 8, so 256 IP addresses. So what you usually do, you do a ping sweep of the target remote class C network. Takes about 5 to 30 seconds, depends on what tool you use, how far away the network is. Then you do a port scan to the live host, and then you look for vulnerabilities on the active services, exploit them, and, well, happy Eastern. Wide range of tools available, Nmap, AMAP, Nessus, lots of exploits, blah, 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 blah. Okay. When we go to IPv6, this is not possible. The normal subnet size is 2 to the power of 64. It's not that much more, but a lot more IP addresses to scan for. I have no idea what the name is for that number, but it takes long, I can assure you. So, if you brute force and you think, okay, machines get faster, networks get faster, 500 million years until you have scanned the subnet. Great. Just that one subnet, which might have just one active server, okay? If you're being clever, like nobody will use privacy extensions, so we know there are special vendors manufacture their the Ethernet cards, so only the key space is reduced that way, so you can still somehow make this key space much smaller, but still will take some months. And it's still too long to do scanning, right? Who wants to scan for some month until to find out, oh, there are 5 machines on the network? Yeah, that's not good. So, but others have the same problems, namely the administrators of the network. They also have to know which machines are there, so they will have services available for that. So first, public servers will need to be in public DNS. Nobody will remember the IP addresses anymore. Any one of us who travel around, they know, for example, their primary DNS service they can always put in and be able to serve somewhere. You will not know the IP addresses of IPv6 DNS servers, right? So public DNS will in the future be the primary source of all information. And inside the company, all hosts will be in the private DNS, in the internal DNS. Otherwise, an administrator will not be able to know which systems are there, where they are placed, how to configure them. So, in a result, in the future, DNS will be the primary source of all information, so every hacker will go for the DNS servers, because there is no other effective way to find out which systems are there. If you're local on a network, it's easy, but you have to get there first. And to find out what systems are there, you will only have DNS and let's say Google stuff, find out what systems there, but from network side, it's DNS. We have some new opportunities like the standard multicast stuff to find out about routers, DHCP server, time server and stuff. Once you've compromised one system, it's trivial to find all other systems on the same network. That's trivial, but you first have to get there. After that, everything stays the same. So once you know the system, you do the port scanning, you do look which services are there, exploit them, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But remote alive scans on networks will become impossible. And that's the basic point of that here. So I wrote some tool. I wanted to show it, but somehow on Linux I couldn't get the presentation to work, so I had to reboot to Windows, so I can't really show the tool. I wrote a tool which is Alive6, which is part of the toolkit, which does the following. It sends an ICMP6 echo request, same like you can do with a ping6 command. What it also does is sends a packet with an unknown header, a packet with an unknown hop-by-hop option, and an IP fragment. The first fragment, because then you get an ICMP reply, oh, I can't assemble this packet. For that reason, because this you can turn off. Just configure do not reply to multicast or broadcasters ICMP requests. This you can turn off. This you can't. Maybe in the future on some operating systems, but as far as I know, for these systems I reviewed, you can't. So there is always a way to find all local systems, whatever you do. And this is what this tool does. It has some other stuff like one-shot fragmentation and routing header options. I'll come to that later, because that was research I did, and that's pretty interesting. So next topic is DHCP in IP version 4. And what is the corresponding in IP version 6? DHCP, everyone knows it, is used to get an IP address on the network. Anybody can run a DHCP server, so it's all trusted. You have to trust, otherwise you're fucked. If you're a rogue DHCP server, you can feed fake DNS servers, routing information, blah blah, become man in the middle. Similar concept with ARP, Address Resolution Protocol, which is used to look up a MAC address if you know the IP address, which is important if you want to network connectivity. Anybody can send those replies, so this is a broadcast being sent to anyone. Hey, who has that IP address? And everybody who raises his hand, he might be the lucky one to get the traffic. So hackers always try to be first. How is this in IP version 6? There is no security added to both protocols. ICMP version 6 does not have ARP, and you usually do not need normal DHCP. So first, ICMP version 6 has stateless auto-configuration, which means as you have your MAC address, your own MAC address, you always know the host part of your IP address. Just what you need is the network part of your IP address. And routers send around, hey, I'm a router. This network should have this IP address range, and if you have 5 routers, everyone announcing a different IP address space, what area you will have 5 IP addresses. Yeah? Different network part, but same host part. This way, you automatically get your IP address. No need for DHCP anymore. Then if you want to know router, you already see the router advertisement, and you know that. And you know, okay, is this address, this is where it goes to, and what priority of the router it is. Also, there is no ARP anymore. Now it's also done with IP version 6. It was a clutch with ARP. Another protocol beside IP just to solve the IP, how to get the IP address problem, and that's not efficient. So what is being done is ICMP 6 is now used to get the MAC address for an IP version 6 address. You do enable discovery, and enable solicitation request and say, oh, who has this MAC address for this IP address, and then anybody can answer and say, hey, it's that. What they also implemented here is a duplicate address detection. So whenever you get a new IP address, you make a request, does anybody has this IP address already? And if nobody answers, okay, I can use it. So how does this work with the stateless auto configuration? If a client needs that message, he can just request it with a router solicitation request and ask for a router advertisement. This FF002, this is the multicast address, all local routers. So if you ping this address, all routers on your local network will answer. That's pretty nice. ICP type 133, and any router on the network will then answer with a router advertisement reply. And there will be the network part, the prefix, lifetime, and so on and so on. So this is basically DHCP Lite. You don't have the DNS servers yet, but you can find them with another multicast. So who is the DNS server here? So that's pretty easy. So there is no real need for DHCP anymore. And it doesn't mean, it's not important how dumb the machine is. If it's a toaster, if it knows IP version 6, it can get on the internet. But anyone can send those router advertisements. And I wrote a tool for that. And this tool tries to be a little bit clever because you can set priorities on routers and stuff. and it always claims to be the highest priority. So it will usually become the default router on the network and get every traffic. So neighbor discovery is like an IP version 4, ARP request, who has his has his MAC address. Same here, you have a neighbor solicitation request, ICMP type 135. You send it to everyone on your local network who has this IP address. And then the owner of that IP address sends an ICMP type 136, which is neighbor advertisement, and says, hey, this is my MAC address. So you might know the tool Parasite, which I wrote 5-6 years ago about ARP man in the middle tools. This is now Parasite 6, which is the same for for this attack. It just claims to have every IP address on the network and tries to be very fast. So sometimes it's faster at the kernel, sometimes it's slower. It also depends on the network speed and stuff. So I did it over wireless, and I was still able to get to redirect some traffic yesterday on my machine. I had to test it, so sorry. So, works very well. Yes, I come to that later, and why you will never see that. That's what's in the design spec. Yes. The question was that this can be secured by IPsec, and I said yes, that's what's in the specs, but you will never see it. But I come to that later because that's an important point, and that's why it's still all the vulnerabilities are still in there. But I come to that. Don't worry. The duplicate address detection works exactly the same as also a solicitation question says, who has this IP address? And if nobody answers, it just assumes, okay, nobody is using that. Well, I wrote another tool which just says, hey, I have this IP address, I have this IP address, I have this IP address, and well, Windows is very happy about this, not allowing you on the network. I can tell you, Linux doesn't care. Linux has the worst implementation IP version 6 I've encountered. Every other operating system, including Windows, is better. It's so bad. It's really the worst implementation I saw on IP version 6. Stuff is not working. And I made an implementation error. I'll show you that later, because this can be used for nice smurfing. But only Linux. All others are fine. Oh, we already at smurfing. Oh. Okay, smurfing. Smurfing is a very interesting misuse of broadcast addresses on the internet. You send a packet to a broadcast address, so like a ping request, and you get lots of replies. Because usually, well, most operating systems send a reply to a multicast echo request. So what people were doing, send those requests, but spoofing the source address of your request for someone you didn't like. So he was getting all the replies. And this was very nice to fill up their network connection and DOS them. If you want to smurf an IP version 6, it doesn't work because there are no broadcast addresses. And the usual multicast addresses are link local only or site local only. It doesn't really help you. There's an RFC which states that ICMP response should send when a destination was a multicast address. There are some exceptions where a response to a multicast packet is being made. There are two big Cisco security documents which says these are the vulnerabilities in IP version 6 and we have to handle. And they said, oh, this is not a problem. Yeah? But if you read the spec closely, there are exception made and they got it wrong. And there are nice ways to exploit that. Locally, you can always smurf, but this isn't real because you're smurfing yourself too. It will only help you if you hack a local machine and then smurf the local network. Well, great deal. You can always DOS your local network, doesn't matter how. Remote depends on implementation on routing headers and fragmentation and stuff. I wrote two tools for that. One is Smurf6, which just does the local initiated smurfs, so it just floods the local all nodes multicast address, so it's nothing really special. And then I did rsmurf because I found a vulnerability in the IP version 6 implementation of Linux. Oh, big surprise. So it's reverse smurf because it works differently. You just send a ping request to some Linux box.